right, it's news that works for your money this morning. Most of us feeling the financial strain right now. Just about everything, it costs more. We don't have to tell you that. But because of that, it is even more important to budget. For years, you may have heard Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's touted what she calls the 50-30-20 rule. With this rule, you use 50% of your income after tax deductions for things you need, 30% for things you want, and the last 20% you put away in savings or you invest it. Well, now, with the inflation, budgeting can be even more difficult. And according to a New York Post article just recently, if you're still using that 50-30-20 rule, well, you're budgeting wrong. The Post is suggesting a 60-30-10 rule. So here to break this down for us, the budget method that's best for you is business and marketing analyst Seth Denson. Seth, first of all, welcome to Morning on Merit Street.
Thanks for having me. It's fantastic, beautiful place. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to kind of start with this 60-30-10 rule. Break it down for people if they have not heard this before. What does it mean and why this shift?
Sure. So you talked about the 50-30-20 rule. Well, effectively what's happened is the cost of living has gone up so much that the needs needed more money. So what we're seeing is this shift that says that what used to be 50% to cover your needs, it's now had to go up to 60%. We kept the wants there at 30%, right? Because you got to live and you got to enjoy life a little bit. But the savings has been compressed. Now that's a challenge though, as we think about where the market has been and where things have gone. 2020, we actually saw the highest savings rate in over 50 years at over 15%. That's now down to 3%.
Well, that was during the pandemic as well. So people probably were not spending as much, weren't going out. That disposable income wasn't being used.
Yeah, you were getting stimulus money. You couldn't go to the economy was kind of shut down. So it was a great time to save, and many Americans did, and thankfully they did. But now we've seen that shift with the overall inflation and wage compression that's happened over the last few years.
When you talk about savings, of course, we hear savings is so very important, and it is. With this new budgeting shift, though, and you're kind of taking some of those savings away, is this good for every generation?
Well, I always say the best budget is the one you'll actually follow, right?
Well, yes, always.
You know, that's a critical component, right? Kind of like dieting, right? And so I always say that every situation is different. So rather than generationally, the key is actually having a budget and be disciplined to follow it. So you should be saving. That's critical. The things we can control are those wants. So try to be disciplined, recognize the situation that we're in economically, and understand that however you can structure those needs as best as possible is critical. So whether that's the 60-30-10 or the 50-30-20 or candidly anything that allows you to save, to cover those needs and manage your wants effectively.
We're talking primarily, of course, about inflation, but what are some of the other factors, if there are any, that we should be considering when we're coming up with that budget and what budget is right for us?
Yeah, housing is a critical one right now, right? So if we think about pre-pandemic in 2019, we've seen average rents go up over 30%, average mortgages over 50%.
That has been surprising.
It is.
And disturbing at the rate with which those increases are taking, and they're not stopping.
Well, that's exactly right. And unfortunately, in the United States right now, we're short about 4 million homes from what we actually need to satisfy those needs. So those types of expenses are going to go up. Obviously, inflationary challenges. And unfortunately, wages just haven't kept up with what the overall inflation rate has been.
When you look at the different budgeting, and you've been so great to break some of these options down for us, what's the best way for someone watching when they're like, okay, I know I need to budget. I know I need to decrease the wants maybe, and you know, how do we implement this so it's not so destructive to our everyday life? I think that's what makes it hard for people to stick to a budget.
Sure. Yeah, the first thing is let go of the guilt that you haven't done it in the past, right?
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, you got to get rid of that. The old saying, right, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, but the second best time is today. So take the right steps going forward. First of all, track where your money is going now. So look at your expenses over the last 3 months, pull them all out. Yeah, it's tough to do sometimes. You go, be honest about it. Because if you know where your money has gone, you can now set it on track to going. I've got kids, so I always say, if you want to get to Oz, you got to build the yellow brick road. So step by step, that's the critical piece.
All right. You know, one piece of advice and encouragement, I love that you said get rid of the guilt. Is there anything else we can think about? Because a lot of times you look back and you say, oh, I lost all this time. Oh, how am I going to catch up? How should we approach that?
Yeah, the best thing to do is keep things simple. Simplicity allows you to execute. And the more complex we try to make things, the harder it is. And recognize that life is variable. There's ups, there's downs. We have to manage that effectively. If you set that tone and give yourself some grace, you can be successful.
Grace is the key.
That's right.
Thank you, Seth.
Hey, thanks so much.
We appreciate your insight and your advice.
Great to be here.
We'll see you next time.
All right.